Learning establishments are composed of more than just the teacher-student pedagogical relationship. It's a whole web and network of social relations at various levels of the institution and its discourse and the people and groups who uphold and participate in it. And a lot of times, someone's success or even survival within academia demands more than just the obvious skills of researching and writing and doing well on assignments and presentations and getting good grades. In order to succeed or even really hang on, there's a hidden but constant pressure to socialize with others within this context. And like in any discourse, there's a specific institutionalized way of forming connections and contacts and social networks, which are all arguably more important than the formal stuff of academia, of writing and presenting and researching and doing good on assignments and getting good grades. There's a saying, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. So forming a valuable social contact that you can then reap rewards from in the future in terms of career opportunities, that could be worth a lot more in your academic experience than getting an A on a course. These social expectations associated with academia are often unspoken, implied, and unacknowledged, but they're still extremely powerful and influential in their governance of our activity and how we conduct ourselves. The social skills that are highly valued in these situations aren't specified in any job descriptions. They're not taught during orientation week, and there's no courses such as Social Networking 101, but there's constant pressure to employ these skills throughout your academic career and to consequently build your career beyond that. Even if you've chosen academia as your career, like say you become an instructor or professor or researcher, your success and viability within your field is less determined by your merits and your work and more determined by your contacts and who you know. So when it comes to publishing something or getting hired or getting research funding, a lot of these things are determined by your peers and your colleagues and committees of people who it pays to know, and it pays well to know them well, because these personal connections are often the factors that land you the publications and research grants and positions you want in your academic career. A lot of one's career advancement and progression depends heavily on the social networks that you formed within academia, those valuable social contacts, getting the support of influential colleagues that you can use for reference letters or to put in a good word for you with their academic committee members when making a decision to hire you or promote you or something. So given the highly competitive nature of this career field in academia, you need to be known and liked by your colleagues. You can't really get by just on the merit of your work. You could be the most brilliant writer or researcher, but the truly renowned figures in their field stand out because they're not only talented in their field, but they're also able to navigate the social world of academia and form the right relationships over the years to be offered the right opportunities to be seen and heard in the right places and reach that level of renown. If you look at the schedule of planned talks for an academic conference or the list of contributors to an academic edited book where each of the chapters are written by a different author, a lot of them are groups of friends in that field. Like the editor of that book, before they even put it together, they already have a Rolodex full of names of colleagues and friends in their department or institution or neighboring institutions who they can offer the favor of giving a place in that book and write a chapter for it. So these friends of the editor can submit their chapters at perhaps a lower standard of quality than they would have been held to if they were unacquainted stranger with the editor. And in exchange for that increased recognition that comes with getting a publication in a book, they might pay the editor back with a favor in the future. And the same thing can be seen with a lot of academic conferences. What brings that specific group of presenters together is not only the relevance of their presentations to the topic of the conference, but before they even wrote their paper on the topic, they were already notified of the opportunity to speak there by the organizer, who's part of their social network of contacts. And again, this mutually benefits both parties. The speakers who are invited to a conference by its organizer often have their travel fees and hotel costs paid for by the conference funding. So it's also often a tourist trip of whatever city the conference happens to be held in. So you may not have ever considered that as a factor, but some academics choose a job in Vancouver because they know it'll be easier to organize events and attract scholars from other parts of the country or the world because Vancouver is a desirable city to visit. And then the conference organizer can later use the papers collected in that conference to make their own edited book on the topic and reap more academic capital from their effective usage of social capital. So a lot of conference proceedings and chapters in edited books or journals or hiring decisions in departments are determined by that social aspect. And these kinds of opportunities often just spring up informally out of social exchanges as opposed to something more formal like being posted on a community bulletin board. It's more often just offered on the spot in an informal exchange, like, hey, I actually heard from my buddy who's on the selection committee that there's an opening in our department. If you want, I can put in a good word for you. So that not everyone has the same opportunity to be offered a lot of jobs on an equal playing field with everyone else. A lot of times, jobs in academia are offered without other people even being aware that those jobs were up for grabs in the first place, thereby excluding a lot of people who don't have those existing social networks for them to rely on, that array of contacts that they could use to get opportunities for career advancement. So this makes it tricky for outsiders to navigate within academia. This can include cultural outsiders like international students or scholars who aren't accustomed to the norms and traditions of the culture they're studying in, or economic outsiders if someone's from a working class background and they find themselves in a very highfalutin setting, rubbing elbows with snobby socialites and stuffy intellectuals from upper class backgrounds. If you're from a working class background, it can be hard to know how to fit in. And I've experienced this in academia. Like, I'm very working class. I'm the son of a plumber, literally, and the brother of a plumber. Like, my parents and family are as working class as it gets. They're Irish immigrants, and I'm the first in my family to go to university. So in my upbringing, I wasn't afforded the privilege of attending high-class social events and learning the proper etiquette of navigating within academic social events. Think of a cocktail party, for example. A lot of academics socialize in the context of a cocktail party. I'm not familiar with how those are supposed to function, where to place the napkin or which cutlery to use with which meal. So if you're not from that specific socioeconomic class background that tends to predominate within academia, that in which you would have learned these things and developed this habitus, it's going to lead to a clash in your values and tastes and a clash of different habitus. There's a specific academic habitus that you need to seamlessly fit in. And that habitus is primarily a white, upper class male habitus. And people who enter into academic settings without that traditional grounding in white upper class male culture will struggle to learn its shared meanings held between members of that culture, their vocabulary, their ways of doing things, their terminology that's being used within social exchanges and conversations. Like I said in the week on meta communication, your pitch, your intonation, your pauses, all that could be misaligned compared to what's typical of the norm of the academic habitus. And it's going to put up a lot of social barriers and obstacles that could prevent you from being an effective player in the academic game. Because it is a game, and some people are better knowledgeable of the rules, the customs, and the etiquette, and the relationship and contacts you need to get by in this game and to win and succeed at the academic game. So consequently, creating a full academic experience and career for yourself kind of involves assimilating with the dominant culture and kind of removing those aspects of yourself that are disjunctive compared to what's expected of the academic habitus, such as consciously repressing characteristics of your habitus that are indicative of your working class sensibilities or your cultural background to make yourself fit in better with the values and practices that predominate academic culture. So if you have an accent that's very indicative of a working class background or a different cultural background other than being a white guy, essentially, anything that will point you out and mark you as not belonging to the norm, as deviating from the norm, some people find themselves repressing these aspects of themselves in order to fit in. Therefore, academic discourse serves to once again ensure conformity for the ones who enter this discourse. Just as medical discourse, like I said last week, produces a pacifying effect, academic discourse produces a conformatizing effect, where subjects are made to shed aspects of themselves and rid themselves of the things that make them unique in order to become more uniform in their appearance and ideas and conduct. So I can demonstrate this clash of academic habitus in an example I have. When my supervisor retired, he threw a cocktail party and invited all of his colleagues and students to gather and celebrate. And there was no formal dress code that was stipulated as part of the invitation. And it was the middle of summer, so I showed up wearing a t-shirt and jeans, thinking it would be practical and comfortable considering the weather. But I guess even though there was no explicitly stated dress code, there was this unspoken norm that if you want to attend a retirement party, you need to wear a full three-piece suit because that's what everyone else is wearing. And they seemed quite physically uncomfortable, with the scratchy wool against their skin. But I was the one who felt mentally uncomfortable because I felt like I stuck out due to not getting the memo that didn't exist about it being a more formal affair than I thought. So not just my appearance was clashing and awkward due to my habitus and expectations, but also my conduct at the party. I had a hard time milling about and ingratiating myself in conversations. It's so confounding that other people find it so natural to just mingle with others, and they have this built-in ability to socialize in that setting and have their wine glass in one hand and their plate of crackers and cheese in the other hand and just make pleasant conversation and be charming. Early on I found some success, like there's one or two of the people who are by themselves so you can approach them more easily, but then later in the night everyone was already talking in groups, and I just found it impossible to insert myself into one of those groups naturally. I just kind of had to awkwardly hover outside of those conversation circles and try to find an opening, but it was so foreboding and intimidating. So as a result, I mostly just hung out beside the food table and pretended to be super interested and intent on the food. Like I was trying to act like I knew what I was doing and I was just there to eat. So I just try to make myself seem preoccupied with that and avoid eye contact with anyone. Just seem busy as if this is my choice. Like, I could be talking with you right now, but I just really need to eat this crackers and cheese. So this awkwardness that I experienced at an academic social event is likely attributed to my working class habitus and my lived experience growing up in a working class household and not having the opportunities to familiarize myself with formal events such as this and develop that intuition for how they're supposed to flow and the social graces required to manage myself in those situations. And these events aren't trivial throwaway things. They're very impactful in terms of your academic status and career. Like other academics who attended that party could be making decisions in the future related to hiring practices or who to invite to a conference or to publish something. And even if the topic they're working on is related to one of my research interests, they may still have that memory in their head of that not so amazing first impression I made of my social faux pas, and instead decide to choose someone else for career advancement opportunities, someone else who's more adept, who's proven to be more knowledgeable of how to navigate academic social events. Social networking is of paramount importance within academia, and we can define social networking as the social performances, rituals, social skills, and events which might appear unrelated to the express purpose of education or academia. But like I said, they're important for that career building aspect. And oftentimes, this practice of social networking could take the institutionalized forms of after school clubs, sports teams, conferences, social events such as orientation week, and groups that go beyond school clubs, even such as fraternities and sororities. So, the background of this slide looks like the fraternity slash sorority called Fiji, shorthand for Phi Gamma Delta. And there's a whole national network of different fraternity and sorority groups, each with their own combination of Greek letters representing them, and each preserving a pretty lengthy history of traditions that make these social groups like a more transparent version of historical secret societies, such as the stonemasons, as their membership are each composed of powerful and influential people. So there's a lot of parallels there. Fraternities and sororities are national networks of effectively built-in friendships where, as long as you can afford to pay an entrance fee and significant annual membership fees to buy into that social group and survive its harrowing initiation and hazing rituals, you get instant access to a whole network of valuable social contacts. Basically, anyone who is or was a member of not only your university's branch of that fraternity or sorority, but the entire fraternity or sorority network. And these alumni may be high-ranking members of the social elites now. So it can bestow a lot of social and career benefits and advantages on fraternity or sorority members, so that when you're searching for a job after finishing school and the person who is doing the hiring is a former member of your fraternity or sorority, even if it's from not from your specific school, you could have been in Fiji at SFU, and they could have been in Fiji at NYU, New York University, in the 90s. You'll still have a shared common experience and a bond due to participating in those shared traditions of the group. You can maybe share some stories with that person of similar experiences in that fraternity, or you can do the secret handshake during the job interview, and you're much more likely to get the job over hundreds of other qualified applicants that could give you the edge over all that competition. Even if your resume is about the same, if not a bit worse than competitors, that personal and social connection is often what makes the difference between getting the job and not. So another quick example of this would be during my master's degree. Our cohort of the MA students in that political science program was mostly composed of international relations students. There were 3 streams, and about 10 of the 15 students were in the IR stream, the international relations stream, and 4 of the other 15 were in the Canadian government stream of the poli-sci program, and then only 1 student in that cohort belonged to the political theory stream of that program, and that student was me. That division into 3 different streams didn't make a major difference in our cohort's social dynamics at first. We mostly got all the same opportunities to interact with each other equally, but those 10 IR students were part of the university's Model United Nations Club, and an undergrad student in that club had a wealthy father who offered all 10 of those students a free trip to Boston to attend the big annual Model UN meeting that all the universities sent a team of delegates to. And by virtue of me not being in the IR stream of the program, I was not a part of the UN club, and I was excluded from this opportunity to gain social capital. And even though up until that point I had been the most outgoing and sociable member of our cohort, all those 10 students returned from their Boston trip with all sorts of stories and fond memories of bonding moments, and frequently bringing them up in our interactions. Like, it would be me talking with 2 or 3 other IR students, And then suddenly one of them will be like, oh, that reminds me of that time at the bar in Boston after the Model UN. And then this happened, and then that happened. Oh, wasn't that great? And since I wasn't present when those memories were being made, I couldn't relate to or contribute to or chime in when they were talking about them, which consigned me to the role of spectator during these parts of the conversation, just rolling my eyes because I'd heard these stories like 3 times already, but they couldn't seem to get enough of repeating them. And I was like, enough about the Boston trip already. I felt excluded because I didn't go on that bonding trip. So it's possible now that if one of those former members of my cohort gets some sort of inside knowledge of an hiring opportunity in their company, and they're considering who of their network to offer it to, do you think they're more likely to offer it to me, their friendly political theory stream member of their master's cohort, or their Boston BFF, holla, friends for life, bonded forever? Probably those bonding opportunities will make the difference in that case between me getting offered that job and one of those IR students who has an extra connection getting it. When there are winners of socially accessed career opportunities, there will inevitably be losers. When someone is given this arguably unfair social advantage, that means countless others are excluded from accessing that social advantage. Again, regardless of academic merit, which you would think would play a large role in academic success, but the social element is really almighty. So this ensures that people with access to powerful friends and networks and family can gain power at the expense of people who are out of the loop. And just as with the week on medical discourse, where we were talking about how ideology works to conceal the structural problems and make it seem like a personal problem, the same thing's happening here, where if you're failing in academia, or at least in the social aspect of academia, it's seen as your fault, as opposed to any structural inequalities. So the emphasis on social networking puts the focus and the onus and the responsibility on your social skills as an individual. And if you're unable to succeed, then that's seen as a personal failure, as opposed to a failure of the social structure to accommodate you. So if you don't fit in, that's seen as your fault, as opposed to looking at the structure's inequalities that allow for certain people to fit in much easier than others. And there's a structural, institutional disadvantage faced by those who fit awkwardly or not at all into that white, male, upper class defined conventions of academic life. And again, it's unofficially maintained. It's not written anywhere explicitly, like within fraternities and sororities. The racial composition is predominantly homogeneously white, but that's likely not due to any specific express rule that the majority of students selected to be members must be white. It's more likely that the whole fraternity culture and the informal traditions of that organization are transmitted and reproduced across generations so that it feels like it happens more naturally and coincidentally. They don't need to uphold a quota because things just naturally fall in line in ways that reproduce that unspoken quota. Because even the students who aspire to be accepted as a member of these fraternity and sorority groups, the ones who actually go out and apply for them and go through the initiation rituals, they're the ones who were targeted by academic discourse to desire to be a part of a fraternity because they've seen in media representations and culture people like them, white upper class people, being a part of these fraternities and sororities. So it opens up a subject position for you within discourse. People who never see themselves in mediated representations of fraternity or sorority members won't even think to join them or desire to join them. So that fraternities don't have to outwardly exclude anyone. They're pre-excluding themselves because the discourse doesn't allow for that potential of them joining a fraternity or sorority to have meaning. And it's through the unspokenness of these entrenched social norms, through the fact that no one sheds a self-reflexive light on what's going on in the informal areas of academic social life, that patterns of power and privilege are reproduced. So some of the people who join fraternities and sororities are called legacy members because their parents or grandparents were part of that same fraternity. And I think that usually entails them not having to pay as much in membership fees, and it gives you all sorts of easy entryways into those social groups. So that if your family who came before you were already in positions of power, then you're more likely and more easily able to access the same routes and conduits of power. And then conversely, if you're from relatively disadvantaged parents or lineage with less financial or social capital or resources, then you're liable to face more obstacles and disadvantages throughout school life and social life and life in general. So let's take another example. Let's say you become an executive in a club that you're very passionate about, or you get into your dream program or co-op, and you're so excited to bond with your cohort or team members or work peers. And also, as an unrelated side note, you can't drink due to your religion or just due to personal preferences. But that shouldn't play a factor in how you get along with your newfound colleagues, right? Well, let's say you all go out for the first time for like a social event, and they're all drinking alcohol and doing cheers. You're going to automatically stick out and maybe not fit in as readily as others. And then maybe as a result, they don't invite you next time. And like I said, those are bonding moments when people in your cohort or social group are making hiring decisions years down the line. They're more likely to remember and think fondly and give opportunities to the people that they had those memorable nights and great drinking stories with. Or let's say instead of you can't drink due to religious reasons or personal reasons, let's say you're from a more working class background and you're on a very tight budget. Like you got your dream opportunity, but you don't have much money for extracurriculars. So again, you go out with the club that you're an exec for, or the program that you're a part of, for a social event at a very expensive restaurant. And them all being up from an upper class background, they could be ordering all sorts of expensive food and drink. And then at the end of the meal, they'll say, "Oh, we'll just split the bill." And you're thinking, "I just ordered a water and a salad. Can I pay for mine separately?" Again, you'd automatically stick out and be seen as problematic. Like they're just trying to have a good time, a smooth time. And here's this person just throwing a monkey wrench into the whole gears of the situation and ruining our flow. So that pre-existing disadvantage of not having as much economic capital as others in your group could lead to more and more disadvantage in the future. So it's kind of a self-perpetuating cycle where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Because it's not just a matter of being financially rich or financially poor. That will lead to people being socially rich and socially poor, which will then reproduce itself in other forms of capital or lack thereof. And again, none of this is written or entrenched in any official school rules or social group rules. Universities have anti-discrimination policies and all sorts of written formal codes that try to, or at least attempt to pretend to prevent these sorts of inequalities. But those can often amount to lip service and just official statements that the university can't be held legally responsible or get sued for anything. But beneath that official surface, functionally and systematically, the inequality very much thrives underground in unspoken ways. And through this, the microcosm of academic life replicates and reinforces the social order in general. So the social workings of academia are very much like a small scale version of the social workings of society at large. And the same people who are the winners in society are going to be the winners of social academic life. And that's going to make them easier to be winners in society. So those in privileged groups within a university will put each other into positions of power in the working world after university. And even when those people are older and have no personal connection to the young grads who are coming into the workforce, like I said, if one of those recent grads belongs to the same fraternity network or the same alma mater or shares some sort of mutual friends with the person making the hiring decision, then that alone could be what sets them apart in an applicant pool that's highly competitive with tens to hundreds of qualified applicants. This unspoken system of social networking ensures that a degree of nepotism, which is when one hires their family, or cronyism, which is where one hires their friends, will reinforce and perpetuate and reproduce the cycles and structures of social privilege. So, academic survival increasingly hinges on a student's ability to navigate social settings and their grasp of the customs and social conventions that are agreed upon by fellow members of an academic culture. These are norms that you have to adhere to within the context of academia. And when you don't, it can lead to a loss of reputation and being excluded from all sorts of social opportunities and advantages, and thus, consequently, career opportunities and advantages. The Gillies and Aldred reading provides several good examples of having to navigate social academic settings in order to develop that requisite reputation for success within academia. And if you don't share the same knowledge of the customs that are agreed upon and the shared values and understanding within an academic context, then it could lead to, like I said, a lot of potential embarrassment or ostracization, as was the case with the retirement party example, where I felt ostracized because I didn't know the shared customs of the unspoken dress code and unspoken etiquette for mingling. Those social events can really be a terrifying experience. I think we've all been there, even outside of school life strictly, where you're at a dinner party and you don't know many people there. Maybe you're at a family function with a lot of distant family, or a work party or a club social or something, and you're supposed to mingle and circulate, but it's so intimidating. So you may find yourself, as I did, hovering around the snack table and pretending to be intently focused on the food, or perhaps you went to the event with someone you know and are comfortable with, so you mostly just stick with them throughout the evening or event as your social safety net. But as that reading mentions, this could even be judged and frowned upon in academic social contexts and reflect poorly upon your social abilities, as if you're incapable of thinking or moving independently and are connected at the hip with someone else, which isn't the case, but all sorts of undesirable conclusions could be drawn from people interpreting or misinterpreting your behavior at a social networking event. There's a feeling of imposter syndrome, that feeling of putting on a mask of self-assuredness and confidence where you're trying to pass and convince people of the verity of your performance as an academic from an upper middle class who fits in. Even if you're not that person, you're just trying to get people to believe your performance. And this sense of faking it until you make it can be accompanied by feelings of disconnection, of alienation from yourself, from your own identity, of vulnerability, like you're constantly about to be exposed, like someone will rip your mask off and show the world who you really are. And this can cause us to harden our shell and withdraw further into an artificial exterior of what we present to others, lest we slip up and let our inner self emerge into our outward performances in social and social academic life. It requires constant self-surveillance and self-monitoring and self-discipline to keep up this charade, this facade that we're trying to mold ourselves into the roles we're seeking. You're trying to make that mask become the real you, because that's who you're striving to be. So that Gillies and Aldred reading, like I said, introduces even more good examples of the social conventions and customs and etiquette that exist in informal ways in academic life. A good example that they provided is the differences in gender when it comes to appropriate forms of dress within the social academic context. And if you're uninitiated to that world, it can be difficult to decipher what's appropriate and what's inappropriate, what's considered normal and abnormal in terms of dressing and conducting yourself. So these unwritten codes are often skewed to be very sexist, in the sense that male academics get away with a lot more in terms of dressing more casual or even being messy and unkempt. And people will just attribute that to their brilliance. Like, oh, that male professor is so brilliant, he doesn't brush his hair and he wears the same crusty sweater vest every day, so he must be a genius who's beyond the superficiality of dress and appearance. Whereas with women, in order for them to be taken seriously within the academic setting, they have to constantly be vigilant and on the top of their game in terms of dressing professionally, which is more expensive and time consuming. And no one mentions that. Like females have to go out of their way to make sure that the clothes they're wearing are identifying as belonging as a member to that social group of academic culture. So they're actively trying to find clothes that mark them not as working class or from exotic cultures, but as upper middle class and not belonging to any culture except white male culture, lest they commit a fashion faux pas and are looked down upon by the rest of the faculty. And don't kid yourself, faculty members can be very judgmental and gossipy when it comes to informal and social matters such as this. You'd think they'd be more focused on their academic work, and even when they are talking about others, you'd think they'd be more liberal and open to everything given their academic viewpoints. But in terms of upholding their institutions and discourses, conventions, and traditions, they can be surprisingly stingy and conservative and lacking critical self-reflection. Whenever I meet with two or more professors for just like a lunch gathering or something like that, I'm always shocked just the degree to which they gossip to each other. I guess that's just pervasive in every industry, even ones you think would be a bit more tight-lipped and focused on more serious business. And no one in academia would ever say anything about their faux pas directly to the offender's face, because that's not really how academics do things. They would never mention directly to the person that they're a bit underdressed or not conducting themselves appropriately for the event. They'll just be outwardly polite to the offender and inwardly petty while talking and gossiping to each other. So considerations that should never be brought into the domain and judgments of academia very much are. Like lifestyle choices originating outside academia are constantly subject to value judgments within academia, which serve to shame and embarrass and ostracize people who don't meet those preordained standards and norms for habitus and social conduct. Being identified as deviating from the norm means being positioned as inferior. So you don't want to deviate from the norm at all. You want to make yourself as normal as possible to fit in and protect yourself from being singled out for any sort of discrimination. So you may have heard of old boys clubs or old boys networks, and this phrase emerged in the mid-19th century to describe the social bonds deriving from membership of particular elite social groups or educational institutions. And this shared affiliation is capitalized on to access favors, support, and connections, and thereby protect and ensure that continued cycle of social privilege among the ruling classes. It's a systemic but invisible culture of inherited advantage that replaces a lot of meritocracy, a lot of achieving things because you deserve them, and thus substituting that for a lot of nepotism and cronyism, where you can just exploit your influential connections to get to places that you didn't necessarily deserve to get to based on your work. And most of the powerful social circles within academia and many industries and fields and sectors are composed of old boys networks and their membership of primarily old white men in positions of power who rose to power by taking advantage of the social contacts they made when attending their prestigious and recognized school and or fraternity and or secret society. A lot of presidents, US presidents, tend to come from the same Ivy League university institutions and are the alumni of the same specific fraternities or secret societies that gave them access to this wide network of contacts in positions of power. So this just keeps the cycle going. The cultivation of a valuable social connection thrives on commonality of experience, of sharing the same upbringing, the same experiences, the same points of reference, and belonging to the same culture and having the same worldviews. So if people in power share that same white upper class male worldview, then they're going to be put into power by people who share that same worldview, people who have a commonality of background and experience, thus leading to a conservatizing effect, the conservation of the same ideas and values and the perpetuation of the same ideas and values without anything new or different to challenge the existing state of affairs. The picture in this slide depicts a quintessential old boys network. I believe it's from a White House Correspondents' Dinner event in the 1980s, because you can see US President Ronald Reagan laughing on the far left of the picture, and then Walter Cronkite directly to the right of him with the gray hair and the black suit, who was a CBS news anchor and a household name at the time. And you can even see George H.W. Bush laughing on the far right side of this picture. He would have been Reagan's vice president at the time. So you got some major figures in American politics and media, and they all look to be in some back room of the White House just laughing over cocktails. Who knows what they're laughing about, maybe how rich and powerful they are, but when they retire, they want to make sure that their savings accounts and positions and retirement funds and their legacies are kept in place. And they want to ensure that intergenerational transmission of wealth through habitus and the acquisition of taste that Bourdieu outlined. And they can do this, they can perpetuate that cycle of privilege by hiring people who are similar to them, which precipitates that systematic but invisible culture of inherited advantage. I also want to make a brief note on fashion, because there's a similar homogenization of suits as seen here compared to George H.W. Bush's son in the UN example from the Week on Fashion, with George W. Bush and Tony Blair at a UN meeting wearing identical suits to what everyone in this picture is wearing, despite the fact that there's probably more than 20 years between that picture being taken and this one being taken. So there doesn't seem to be much at all that's changed in the fashion sensibilities of high-ranking politicians across those generations, which leads to the question of what else hasn't changed and was maintained and perpetuated across generations through, in this case, political discourse and its figures. To be a successful academic, particular values and ways of being must be internalized and practiced, thereby developing that specific academic habitus or subject position that tends to empathize with and submit to the values and practices of white, male, upper-class culture. Like I asked on that first slide of what's the purpose of education, that specific question of whether it's to inculcate cultural and social values kind of resonates with this area of academia, because it very much is trying to instill conservative values to keep things the way they are within culture and society. So we can consider the subject position of a student and the mindset and identity and subjectivity that you build over time by virtue of being a student. We occupy this subject position for such a long time that it ingrains a certain habitus into us, a certain self-discipline that we keep and carry with us even beyond the context and discourse and environments of education and academia. So this requirement to fashion an academic self from a limited set of subject positions made available within academic discourse in order to progress in your academic career and life operates kind of like a regulating mechanism, as a conservatizing mechanism, because that academic mask that you are fashioning for yourself is one whose interests align with the interests of the few elites. Again, there's ideology at work when you're acting in a way that maintains the status quo rather than challenging it. So that stepping into this subject position de-radicalizes individuals in academia, and it enforces a conscious and unconscious empathizing with and acquiescence to the expectations of white, male, upper middle class interests. And social networking is the mode by which this is achieved, because it is informal, but it's so effective in reinforcing this cultural bias. So those who have the right academic habitus allow themselves to accumulate a lot of valuable social capital. And we can define social capital as the resources, the social value, and the advantages that can be extracted from your social relationships and membership in social groups. And this social capital can be exchanged for other forms of capital. So take a simple example of an Instagram influencer. Their audience of followers who watch and like them are their social capital. and they accumulate it to a point where that built up social capital is so valuable that they can then transfer it to other forms of capital, such as financial capital in the form of sponsorship videos or other corporate tie-ins and commercial integration into their Instagram account, so that they are leveraging their social capital to gain monetary and financial capital. And the same thing with turning social contacts into career opportunities. That's another example of turning social capital into other forms of capital. Social capital is arguably, in our age of social media, the most important form of capital because it can be easily translated into other forms of power and influence. Whereas inversely, it's harder to buy social capital. Like if you're rich and have a lot of material capital, it is conducive to having the resources and contriving the opportunities to be socially popular. Like let's say you're the student with a wealthy family in a cohort, and you invite all of your cohort over to your family's mansion for pool parties, and that'll make you an influential, powerful member in that social group. So in that case, financial capital can be transferred to social capital, but not as easily or as readily as the other direction of transferring social capital into material wealth. And just as in social media and academia, this leads to a lot of social climbers, a lot of people who are in it to move up the social ladder and gain social capital to then transfer over to academic capital. At the faculty level, this can involve name dropping to get published or co-authoring with a big name in the field. You may not like that person who you're co-authoring with or agree with their research interests or perspective, but it's just the value of your name being associated with their name that drives subjects of academic discourse to structure their habits and goals around accumulating this social capital, which can then be transferred to academic capital. There are a couple of professors in our department of the School of Communication who are very good at this social element of academic life, and thus, as a result, they are prolific publishers because they are eminently productive in doing favors for others and getting favors done for them, and are just really efficient and experienced in navigating these waters of the social elements of academia. And this social capital aspect of academics can take a lot of the sincerity and the genuineness out of our social interactions within that context, as it leads people to see others from an instrumentalized frame as skipping stones that can be used to get to somewhere better, such as strategically associating and socializing with one person because they know this other person that you're really trying to get to. So the academic discourse as it pertains to socialized conduct kind of instrumentalizes our social interactions so that we only socialize if there's something in it for us, some sort of benefit that we can extract from that social connection. And I can also relate to being on the short end of these instrumentalized academic relationships, like at a cocktail party or conference reception, and how professors who I thought I had a good connection with through our interactions in their classes or office hours suddenly acted very differently and were liable to look right past you if there were bigger fish at the event, more prolific figures who they were eager to impress and have the opportunity to talk to.